Good evening and welcome. I'm Diane Meyerhoff, host for tonight's discussion of the City of Burlington school budget, part of Channel 17's ongoing coverage for Town Meeting 2020. Tonight's show is being aired live on Channel 17 and streamed live on the Channel 17 website and is also available as a podcast. We welcome your comments and questions. If you are watching this program live, please join us in the conversation at 862-3966. Tonight, I'm joined by Russ, Elek, the school communications specialist, and Obeng, the school superintendent. Thank you both so much for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having us.
We look forward to hearing what we need to know as voters this year. You have an exciting presentation for us, I'm sure. Yes?
We do, as always.
All right,
we're excited for
good.
our annual meeting.
Yes,
Diane,
yes,
and
absolutely.
Good news and tidings here today.
Absolutely, great.
Yeah, we do have a slide deck we'll kind of share in terms of the board-approved budget proposal.
Great.
And then we'll take time to talk about a few things in the budget process to kind of explain to taxpayers. And feel free to interject in.
I will. Important and deep questions, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yep, and then I think everything that we talk about, we just want to make sure that viewers at home know. We've tried to make this as transparent of a process as possible, and this presentation, along with everything that we've had leading up to the budget, is available on our website, and that's www.bsdvt.org/budget.
Okay.
It will take you right there.
All right, great. So people should definitely take a look, and I think we'll put that on the bottom of our screen at some point. So there it is. You'll be able to take a look at that as well. Great. Okay, so tell us, what do we need to know?
So we'll get started. Well, one of the things we start with our budget, we look at our mission and vision in terms of really focusing the actions and the strategies and investments that we do towards that mission. We've had this mission now for about 5 years. Several years ago, we did a large consultation with community members and everything and kind of came up with this new mission. I think it served us well. It connects to our budget and it connects to many of our actions. And your budget should be, your mission statement should be an articulation of your budget. So we try to revisit that. So you can see that on there, and it covers a lot of things that Burlingtonians are very much invested in. Budget landscape, this is just a quick slide to kind of give you a little description of the different variables that go into the budget. When we start the budget, we say, okay, what's happening in community and society and education this time? You can see there's things around the structural budget challenges that we have, rising wage and benefits costs that go into the budget, labor negotiations, special legislation, environment. Sometimes legislation has an impact in terms of things we have to do or changes formulas in a way that we don't get as many dollars, or sometimes, hardly ever happens, but
we get a little more,
to
perhaps?
get more money.
All right.
Inflation rate of increase, capital investments, and so forth. So. The budget process. So we've been sort of really working and refining this process over the last several years. We had some feedback a few years ago around people wanted to be more engaged from the bottom up and be transparent around how we built the budget. So we created a process where we went out to the community in different settings and first asked them, what is it that you see in our schools and what do you think we need? And then we also do that at the staff level. So our principals work with our staff and they gather that information and we go through a process. We're sure to try to target certain groups that we don't get when we do community pieces, sort of like our special ed parents. They're really busy with their kids. So when you say, come out, they're pretty tied up. Some of our newcomers, we usually have interpreters and translators to try to get that target group. And we've done that the last several years in order to make sure we have their voices.
And again, when we're doing these, we're asking our constituents to come out and tell us what you think that you need, what we need to be building on in the school district, but at the same time that you're telling us what do we need to do, what do we need to implement, how does that tie back to the strategic plan, how does that tie back to our mission, making sure that we're keeping those goals at the top of our priority lists.
So the next slide gives a bit of a budget process highlights, and as we were discussing around the process itself, essentially we want to sort of delineate between what are needs and what are wants, and sometimes people cross that over to think
Just like
what
any
they want
budget, I guess,
is a need. But through our analysis this year, we came out with those like $4.6 million worth of ideas that were considered. So people felt there are lots of things that we could add to our budget, and every year the number is quite similar. I remember one of the years I think we had about 8 million, and people really came out with really excited about, hey, we should be doing this, we should be doing this. Naturally, we can't do it all, and we have to make some decisions, and we also have to consider taxpayers' ability to pay.
Sure.
So that all comes into play as well too. So And so this is just the some trends for people. We want to kind of heighten people's awareness around what's happened in the last 4 years in terms of the tax rates. You can see that on the right-hand side there. And then the budget change in the education spending. And so you can see sometimes the spending is not that much, but the tax rate is much higher. That all depends on the variable numbers that comes down from the state or even the local number. We can get into that later a little bit more deeper. Some people are really interested in that. Some people just want to know the bottom line on the tax rates. And but we wanted to kind of put that up so people can kind of do a comparison for those who are interested.
I think that's what that slide really shows, that we've tried to be very judicious over the past few years, making sure that we're not just adding to the budget. So you'll see years in fiscal year 19, our total budget actually went down. We made a great effort to keep our education spending down as best we can. So you'll see less than a percentage point, and then it goes up to about 5, and less than a percentage point. And so we're really trying to balance the needs, as the superintendent was saying, of our staff and community with what we think taxpayers are actually able to afford.
Right. Okay. So another comparison again, just to let people know that, you know, sometimes people think, oh, we're always asking for resources and supports, but what are we actually putting into the system, right? And so this graphic kind of illustrates that. So in the last 3 years, you can see of new investments. Sometimes there are investments that are put in, but they're not new, right? So set those aside and look at things that we've just added new that we heard from our staff, our students, and our community that we felt that we need to add resources. So you can see the numbers there from FY18 to 19, and last year was FY20. So we've been trying to grow the district judiciously as we move forward and invest in the types of things that we need. At the same time, looking at some of those wants that will add enhancements and enrichment to programming in Burlington.
And that $2.3 million, that is the year that we had the $8 million of requests from the staff and from the community. And so you can see we really tried to, again, go back to the mission and say, okay, what are the needs versus the wants, and pare that down, and came up with a significantly smaller figure that we still felt really made key investments last year.
And we should also say that we're actually talking now about the FY21 budget.
Correct.
That may not be clear to everyone.
Yes,
So
right.
just
Yes.
that we haven't gotten to the reveal yet here.
That is an excellent segue because
Good.
we're going on to, we'll be there in a second, but just quickly glance at this. These are some budget assumptions. So these are the things that we consider that are factors within our budget. So things around wages, health insurance. You know, there's been a lot of conversations around health insurance across the country, and even in Vermont, because the state of Vermont education system has been negotiating over a new education plan, and that's going to be a 13% increase to our bottom line. And then special education and debt service. Debt service, for those who haven't been following, is around our capital plan pieces. So we've been, that's one area we've really championed. Because we heard that in the strategic plan consultations around our buildings. We have some really nice old buildings, but they don't kind of fit for today's sort of technological and makerspace type of style, 21st century learning. So we've been able to focus on that and be able to pay that down as each year.
So we knew, as we were asking administrators and our community members, what are those things that you need to add, in the back of the superintendent's mind and in the leadership's mind, we knew that our baseline budget this year was going to increase by $3.5 million without even getting to those additions. And so that was sort of where we were at the beginning of this budget process. As you can see on the screen, these 4 pieces accounted for that $3.5 million budget increase. And one thing that we want to specifically sort of say to people when we say debt service is paying back the borrowing that's begun for our capital plan and for our high school. So we've heard people say, you're asking for an increase in our taxes, does that include the capital plan? It absolutely does. We asked voters to approve a capital plan, and this is part of what happens is now we have to begin paying that back. We just celebrated on Thursday night, grand opening and ribbon cutting of our Edmonds campus, brand new cafeteria, brand new gymnasium for our students, an ADA accessible entranceway, really making 21st century investments in that building that will last for decades and decades. And so we're thankful to the community for supporting that capital plan, and thank you for supporting our budgets in the past that have allowed us to sort of get where we're going.
Sure, sure. And that 3.5 million, is that a little high as a starting point for you all, or is that generally what you see from year to year?
That is high, and that's why part
Sounded
of it,
high, but
it is
yeah.
high.
Very significant.
Yeah, because of the variable numbers makes it high. Some years, if you, depending where you are and depending on the education spending, you could have a natural increase that's actually in the negative because of the way. But that seldom ever happens. you hope you could get that lucky, but I know it has happened to some of my colleagues over the last few years where they start with, they're going to be a negative, so they can add more resources just based on their school enrollment numbers and all the other factors that come into it. But this is where we are this year, and we knew that it was going to be a Herculean challenge.
Sure.
And so we had to address some of these pieces. So we had the 3.5 million of new spending. The budget increase is 3.96. Your home property tax increase was almost 11%. So that's where we started, 11%. And income cap increase was between 6 and 1.9. But what people are really concerned about is the 10.5, the almost 11% tax increase. So that was a challenge we had to go to work to. So I'll share with you how we tackled
Great
that.
reveal.
How we tackled that
Okay.
challenge. So here we are. So one of the things that I'm proud to say that over the last 4 or 5 years, we've been able to have a surplus in our budget, even though we've had some challenges around it, just by good compliance and good structural financial management. We've got a great business officer who does a great job of supporting our schools in doing that. And so we've been able to have over $1 million of surplus that we can re-enter back into services for students. And that helps us with this almost 11% tax impact. So you can see on the graphic here, when we add that revenue of 1.3 million on the right chart there, and then you put the education spending, then the numbers come down and the tax impact becomes 8.52. Okay? So we got that, we said, okay, we found a strategy to get it down, and we worked with the board, but at the same time we said we need to do better, because we know that our community has supported us over the last few years on budgets, on several bonds that we've had, and they're very much invested in education. But we wanted to acknowledge that they've supported us and demonstrate that we've been able to try to honor the tax impact and find ways to reduce it even further. So we'll get into that. So that led to looking for budget reductions. So every year we've done this in terms of done some analysis around what we can reduce and things like that. And often, when we do the consultations, we do ask, what do you think we can reduce and where we can
Somebody
spend?
else's school or someone
Yes,
else's.
exactly. Or, the one
It can be a
common-
little harder to come by, right?
I would
You
imagine
ask
so.
for the needs, you
That's
get
right.
they
That's
come
the
out
fun
to the
part,
tune
right.
of
And that's the
4
part
million.
we don't get as much. For people have
Sure.
a lot. But one of the common theme is they always talk about central office, administration.
Yes,
You can always
yes, of
reduce. You can
course,
always
of
reduce
course.
a little bit. Everyone feels you can always reduce, but we've been doing that on a regular basis. And so these are areas that we had to see we could reduce without threatening the level of programming, the standard that we're offering. So up from retirement savings reductions, use of in-house counsel, systems that we use in our business offices, and special ed costing estimates in terms of planning for the next years, various non-instructional operations reductions for some different budgets that are non-instructional, not impacting the schools. And then all the way down to reducing central office staff. We've reduced the district lead principal position, was eliminated to capture some dollars. That gave us a total of $1 million that we could use to target this tax impact to bring it down. So we're hoping people can see that, recognize that, see that word there, reductions, and it was adopted, and we're able to bring the tax impact for
And
the
this
year.
was really a line-by-line effort, trying to go through the budget, identify every possible place that we could reduce spending. And if you recall, 5 years ago or 6 years ago, we really had to cut spending in the district, and we really had to sort of dial things back to start getting the finances back into shape. And so when you're looking for the line-by-line reductions, the last thing you want to do is take out the pieces that you've started to systematically put back into place. And so this year's budget was even harder because it was, we added last year, we can't cut those positions that we
Right,
just said
right,
are crucial.
right, crucial.
So this year it was a little bit even more difficult than usual.
Right. And then we got the good part. So as we said earlier on, we had $4.6 million
Yep.
of items that people suggested we should add. We know we couldn't do that without having a significant, I think our rough estimates that we did, if we would have added all those, we would have had like a 16-17% tax impact,
Wow.
which would have been.
That probably wouldn't have flown, yeah.
I'm good at my job, but I don't think we could.
Yeah,
It's a
that's pretty
tough
hard to
sell.
sell, yeah.
But there were some critical things that we felt that we wanted to ensure there were needs to support what our schools were asking for. One is around safe, inclusive schools investments. So safety is a primary goal for us, and it's if you look at what's happening across the landscape, across the country, there are always safety issues in schools, and we wanted to ensure that we kept the level of investment around that, because I know people send us their most prized and loved possessions, and we want to do whatever we can to ensure that they're safe and their well-being is in good shape. We looked at the high school. We wanted to continue to improve programming, and one of the areas around science and technology. So we wanted to add another computer science course that students could access. Of course, literacy development is another area. We're trying to close the achievement gap, so literacy is primary importance to continue to build the capacity of our teachers and support staff to do that.
And we know that starts at the earliest ages, those 3 to 5s, and we do offer pre-K in the district and early development, so that's definitely a place that we want to be targeting. If you can reach students earlier, it's easier to close the achievement gap.
And the last thing I'd like to talk about is contingency. So we need to have, when you do a budget, you should have at least, if you can get up to like a 4%, that's what I know most accountants, within your entire budget, that'd be great to have a buffer to deal with. We can't get there because that's significant for us, but we've always had a little bit from day one, and we've tried to increase it just in case for rainy days. The ceiling comes down for some reason,
don't say that while
and
we're
we
sitting
can replace it right away. So we've been able to add that to the budget in terms of.
And I'm going to stop you right there because we have a phone call.
Oh, okay.
All right, so let's see what we got here. All right. Hi, you're on the air.
Yes, I was wondering, how come they took cursive writing out of the schools?
Cursive writing out of the schools. All right. Well, thank you. We'll address that question.
That's a
Cursive
great
writing.
question. You know what? I was just having that conversation, I think about 2 weeks ago, with one of our staff members, because they were talking about how their children couldn't understand.
Couldn't understand their handwriting, yes.
And that's that's one of the things. I wish we still taught that, but it's across the country. It's been several years now that they don't. It's not part of the curriculum in terms of cursive writing. Everything's moving to platforms and computers. I think you'll see as technology evolves, there's not even going to be much typing. It's going to be all audio. So just society's changing in the way we.
I wasn't sure I was quite ready for that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That was a big leap.
Well, that's where it goes. I mean, in terms of, you have. You can transcribe just by vocalizing, and it'll give you the text
And
and
that's
stuff.
much
So
quicker.
that's
I mean, because
much
that was
quicker.
the thing with cursive writing, right? I mean, at least for me, it's much quicker.
Yeah.
I can,
Yeah.
right? But
That's right.
But
That's
but
right.
doing
But
it
the audios, yeah.
audio, that's
Yeah.
a whole nother level.
Yeah, audio messaging.
And typing is faster than cursive at this point.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, I was writing papers in 4th and 5th grade on the computer.
Right.
And that was
Wow.
15, 20 years ago.
how-
So,
I wasn't.
right.
How old he is. You can tell how young he is, right? So,
Yeah, no, I still write in cursive. I have to
yeah,
admit.
yeah.
So
I used
I'm
to
with
write on
that,
a slate.
That viewer.
and,
All right.
I had the original laptop. Was the slate.
I write on your lap. Yes. Okay. Let's.
Thank you for that question,
Back to the
though. That
budget.
was-
Yeah.
that's-
Yeah.
I wish we
And
could
it's
bring it back.
disappointing. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, with our reductions and additions, we netted close to $700,000 for our budget there. And so now I'll get into the tax rates.
Okay.
I won't spend
Deep
too
breath.
much time on this because this is not the area that people want to really kind of get into too much. But they should be aware that the tax rate is comprised of a number of different variables, right? The education spending, the equalized pupils, the dollar yield, and then common level of appraisal. And so those are all generated at the state level, with the exception of the common level of appraisal, which is the municipal piece. And when we go to the next slide, I think we'll have more detail, and I can describe a little bit around that, or Russ might want to talk to it as well too. Okay, so here it is. So these are the variable numbers. So often people say, "Oh, you talk about the variable numbers," and these are the variable pieces that I mentioned when I talk about the estimate. So the education spending was increased. You can see that number, 4.34. So when they increases, it puts pressure on our budget, right?
Sure.
So, and then the equalized pupil count was decreased by 0.2. So when it decreases, that puts pressure on our budget. So you can see already the first two variables are putting pressure on our budget in terms of creating impact. And then the dollar yield was 2.21, which is another area that showed pressure on our budget. And then lastly, the common level of appraisal. And you'll see this, sometimes people talk about the CLA, commonly used in the common level of appraisal. And that was at 74.77, which is 3.7% decrease. That is significant because there is legislation out there that says that once it's below 80%, the city should review.
And they're working on that.
I think they've started.
a
We were
multi-year
below last
process.
year. It takes a couple of years to do that.
We've had this trouble the last few years.
Yeah.
Correct.
So those are big pieces that have an impact.
And
on
one
our,
quick clarification on that slide.
Yep.
If the homestead yield actually went up, that actually helped our budget a little bit.
Yes.
But so 3 of the 4 factors
Right,
were
okay.
against us.
Right.
We'll take the one that's in our favor.
We do
yes.
want to recognize that.
Okay.
So
all right, Russ, you can talk about
So-
the.
here's the big
this
reveal.
is the big
This
reveal.
is the
Okay.
big
All right.
reveal.
This is
So
what I wanna
all of
see.
that work
Okay.
that we spent trying to pare down the budget, make strategic additions to the budget, we were able to get the property tax rate increase down to 7.36%. So that means the city of Burlington likes to use as a $250,000 home. That means that the tax on that home would be about $5,200, which is about $350 more than you're paying this year.
Okay. So the average homeowner would pay $357
right.
a year. Okay.
And for those who pay on income, we're able to get that total tax impact down to 3.18%. So if you're paying on $50,000 income, that means your taxes are going to be about $1,260 this year, which is only about $38 more than you're currently spending. So only a couple dollars a month if you're paying on income, and about a dollar a day if you're paying on your property taxes.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. The big reveal. There it is.
There's the
It
big
is.
reveal.
So here it is in summary, the impact, what people want to know. We started at 10.5% after we whittled it down with we're not going to do 15, 17% with all the investment.
Thank you.
And then we applied the 1.3 million surplus to it, right, which brought it to 8.52. And then finally with the reductions that we added, we get the final of 7.36% tax impact.
And did the 1.3 million, did that wipe out your surplus? Or do you always keep a little bit is that rainy day fund?
Yes,
we
that
call
was
it?
that was the
So-
entire surplus. You know, in the
that was
past years, we've actually applied half of the surplus and then kept the half. But this year, we really wanted to demonstrate to the community that we were working really hard to bring the tax impact down. So we put the whole lump sum.
Does that make you nervous?
It always nervous when we don't have a reserve.
Yeah.
But we did in the budget also add a
The
contingency.
Okay.
So that's good. So we're trying to plan and
Sure.
keep that.
Sure. And part of the surplus, is that partly because we don't really find out all these numbers from the state for a while?
No.
There's always this little bit of
The
unsure-
surplus has to do with good management throughout the course of the year. So,
So it costs less than we
yeah.
thought.
Well, no, not well. It's around ways where we find savings throughout the course of the year. So I'll give you a couple examples. We set a budget, right, and we put different amounts in different lines, and we have protocols in terms of how you can spend. So we're able to curve spending by having those procedures to validate why you want to buy an extra pen when you already got a pen, right?
So you got to
in the-
borrow the pen. So
Right.
there's a good example, right? The pen is a
there-
perfect example.
So there you go. Sometimes we have vacancies
okay,
that are
sure.
open
Yep.
that maybe don't get filled for 2 months or so that could be a savings, right? And sometimes we get revenue. I think a couple of years ago we received like $400,000 from the city for something that was, I can't remember what it was. I think it had to do with some kind of insurance thing. So that was like a surplus piece.
Sure.
So it's really
A nice surprise.
Yeah, it's a nice surprise. So it's little bits. So
Okay.
we try to manage in a way that, hopefully that we don't overspend in our lines, And so, you figure if you get, you get a little bit from this line, a little bit from this line, and then all of a sudden you put together and you go, hey, we got $1 million, and we can
And
utilize it.
the staffing piece, I think that's really critical for people to understand is, we are always hiring. And so sometimes, like we had to hire 9 paraeducators for kindergarten last year. That took us a little bit longer than we thought it was going to take. But we're not cutting those positions, right? So we had a surplus this year, but now that we have those people hired, we're going to need all of that money
Right.
next
But
year.
it is
going
budgeted
in.
money.
It is
so.
budgeted money, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
5 minutes
good.
left, I think.
Yeah, we have
Right.
about 5 minutes.
we're in good shape. We're right down to the last. So when people go to the
what we're voting on,
this
yep.
is what you're going to vote on. So let me go back one slide just so people to know. So your tax impact is going to be 7.36, not 11%. 7.36.
We probably shouldn't have said that number.
7.36, so people kind of remember that. And then when you go to your, when you go to
Ballot
vote
language,
for
yep.
your ballot, this is the ballot language you'll get a chance to choose on. You can see, you don't see the 7.36 there because legislatively we have to put on certain numbers, and the number that we have is the increase of our budget, not the tax impact, which is the 5.66 that you see there.
Yep.
So don't be surprised. So you understand that, right? It's kind of awkward the way to do that, but
Yeah.
just so
Okay.
people are not misinformed about that.
No, we do not, because that's what Channel 17 is all about, is giving information, not misinformation.
This is the source, right?
This is real
So-
news, not fake news.
That's
There
right.
you go.
That's right.
So just the last slide is we've gone to City Council and they gave us some feedback before the board approved it, and then the board did a final thing there. Now we're just waiting for town meeting day, and we want people to go to our website, which is on the screen now, and they can go and look at this budget slide and look at other information around budget or even
Sure.
capital plan information, and hopefully make a prudent decision.
Informed decision.
Absolutely.
And they can watch the show again or
watch
do it
the
as a
show again.
podcast if they want to hear us
Sure,
again,
yeah.
talking
Or you're
about
having
the
a
details.
hard time sleeping at night, you can put it on. And
That, I like to not think of it that way, but that's fine. And so we should also let folks know about voting, because I always forget to remind people that there's early voting now.
There's early
And
voting.
I'd love to tell you we've started. Is this true? Because I actually, unfortunately, don't know the answer to that
Right.
question. Have we started early voting, or we must be close?
Early voting has begun.
Okay, has
Yep,
begun.
You
Okay.
can definitely
So
look
these-
for it. Yep.
Okay, so you can walk into City Hall anytime and vote,
Yep.
as well as get a mail-in ballot if you prefer, right?
And on Tuesday, you'll be able to, if you're in City Hall, you'll be able to pick up our annual report. That's
Excellent.
also going to be available at the Department of Public Works. That'll have more information on voting. That'll tell you exactly what ward you're voting in if you're waiting for town meeting day. And it lays out this as well as a narrative of sort of how we got to the budget. And also lays out some pretty awesome success stories that we
Yeah.
had
Nice.
last year in
And
the
that's
district.
because you're the
So-
communications
That's right.
specialist. You made sure those got in there,
Well,
didn't
you
you?
want to know that your money is going to support what it's going to support. And in this case, we had some amazing things happen last year. We had a presidential scholar for the 3rd year out of 4 years. 5 out of 9, I think, is what we had. We've had people recognized by Senator Sanders and by Congressman Welch. We've had students make major awards. The Northeast poet, the student poet of the whole Northeast. We had the winner of Vermont's Brain Bee last year, and of course, everyone has seen the women's soccer team has really been just been awesome. And we
Yeah,
have
I
students.
think there's lots to celebrate. So
Yeah.
take an opportunity to
sounds
look
like
at that,
it.
right
Sure.
from staff to students. And I would also say to people to take a look out for opportunities to come and see some of the things we're doing. Last week we did a open house for Edmonds, which is part of our capital plan. People got to see the new renovations and say, "Oh, that's what we paid for." So look
your
out
money
for
at
that.
work.
And there's lots to celebrate. There's lots of good things happening in Burlington, and we're proud to showcase those things. So go to the website, look at the annual report,
Yeah,
and
great.
get out and vote.
Absolutely. Vote now, vote early.
Early.
We
Vote
will
often.
Don't
No,
say
we're not supposed to say that. That we're not supposed to say. And we, of course, love when people come out on town meeting day, too, because, and much of that is in the schools, many of
Yes,
this. So
that's right. Yeah,
another
that's right.
opportunity to show
That's right.
yourselves off as well, right?
Definitely.
All right. So thank you both so much for joining me tonight. Appreciate it. And I love when you come out.
It was great to be here.
Good. I'm glad. We enjoy it. And I want to let everyone know, of course, to vote on Tuesday, March 3rd, or vote early, and especially to tune in for our live results show. We bring you all the results as soon as they're tabulated. So we are the source, really,
source.
for the for the local results. And I will be here, so I hope folks will join me. And you can join us on town meeting day at 7 o'clock is when we'll start our live show. So I hope you'll join us then. Thank you.